Hey y'all, in this series of podcasts, I'm going to talk about citation and the critical importance of citation to the historical endeavor. Um, it struck me when I was teaching this course a couple of years ago that scholars, the folks that teach you, they take citation for granted. I've been doing it for over 30 years now. It's just second nature to me to write citation, to read citation. That's true of my other colleagues. They may not have been doing it as long, but this is what we do. We have to back up what we say in our essays and in our books by citation. But what I realized is that just because we understand it doesn't mean that our students understand it. I don't think it's second nature to our students. It wasn't second nature to us when we were undergraduates. And so in the last couple of years, I've really emphasized just basic citation style. So one of the things that you'll be taking out of this course, and if you do well, you'll know how to cite different pieces of evidence, both primary and secondary and tertiary. You will know the correct style, you will know the correct format, and just as importantly, you'll know how to read citations as well. So, in this first podcast, I want to talk about reading citations. And what I'm going to use over the next couple of podcasts, I'm going to use an article that I just published in June. I'm very excited about it. It's an article that says something new about the Gettysburg Address, Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, which is hard to do. It's hard to say something new about the Gettysburg Address. Very briefly, I argue that when Lincoln says continent in the first line of the Gettysburg Address, he's thinking about the Western Hemisphere because the word continent signified the Western Hemisphere in the 1860s. Now, you don't have to read my article. I can't. I'm bound not to assign you any more work than I put on the syllabus. So you're not reading this article in this series of podcasts as I go over it. I'm going to ask you to download it, or I'll send you a PDF. But what you'll be looking at is my citations specifically. So you won't be reading the article per se. You'll just be looking at my different citations, okay? But we'll start talking about that in the second podcast. Let me go back to citation. When we're talking about citation in the humanities, we're talking about endnotes and footnotes, okay? Footnote is the word that's used the most. If you have Word, which is the kind of document that I use, I print out my, type in my papers and whatever on Word, which they always make Word more complicated and less efficient as time goes on. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But where you find citation in Word is you go into insert and you see footnote, it's kind of confusing. So when I'm saying citation and I say footnote and and I say endnote, I'm talking about the exact same thing. The only difference between footnote and endnote is one comes at the bottom of the page, i.e., footnote at the bottom of the page, and the endnotes come at the end of the document. But so those are the two basic citation styles for the humanities. Now, the social sciences, psychology, for instance, political science, they actually have a different citation style, which I'm not going to go into now. But so one of the things that I think drives students crazy, and justifiably so, is I don't think we've done a great job at just creating one citation style. Different professors want citations to be in slightly different forms. It's the same information. So when you're talking about, let's say, the article that I just wrote, you'll the information you want my name, you'll want the title of the article, you'll want the journal that the article appeared in, You'll want the page numbers of the journal, and you'll want to know when it was published. In my case, it was published in June 2019. So all citation style is basically asking for the same information. Now, the difference between journal articles and books is that in the citation for books, you also put in the publisher and you put in the city that it was published, and if there's a couple of editions of the book, you put what edition that you're talking to, like first edition, second edition, that kind of a thing. So that's one of the key differences between journal articles, citation for articles, and citation for book. We don't really put the publisher of journals in the citation. So just repeat: citation, other words for it, endnote, footnote. The only difference between the two is where they're located in the text. And there'll be different kinds of style for journal articles, for books, for government documents, for those kinds of things. I have to say, probably 80% of the citations that you'll be doing while at UTSA will be journal articles, will be books. Now, another word that scholars use for book is monograph. Same exact thing. It's just a more specialized way of talking about a book. So if one of your professors is talking about a monograph, he or she is talking about a book. Okay, it's just like all specialties. We have a specialized language. So a book equals a monograph equals a book. Okay, uh, newspaper articles. We'll talk about citation for that as well. Newspaper article is of course primary evidence, where journal articles and monographs are secondary. Um, but I would say my guess would be something 8 out of 10 citations. Well, we'll look at the citations I did for my journal article, and we'll take a look. But if you can just master journal article citation, monograph citation, and newspaper citation, you're in pretty good shape. There are going to be all kinds of quirky kinds of citations that are going to throw you for a loop. We'll talk about internet citations. How do you cite something from the internet, for instance? Uh, so every once in a while, you're going to run up against a kind of a complex citation that doesn't follow any kind of general rule of thumb because it's kind of off the beaten path in terms of evidence. And when that happens, just talk to your professor and say, how do you want me to cite this? I have the basics down, but this is kind of an odd piece of evidence, like a photograph, for instance. How would you cite a photograph? How would you cite a dress? I thought y'all did really a terrific job of coming up with different kinds of primary evidence yesterday. And every once in a while, it'll be a little bit challenging to figure out how to cite, to be able to cite these kind of offbeat pieces of evidence. And if you have any questions, just ask your professor. One last thing, and I'll end this particular podcast. Uh, your citation should be numbered. I like mine in Arabic numbers 1, 2, 3. You have different options about how you can number it. I prefer just 1, 2, 3. Most citations will be at the end of the sentence. It's a small letter that's slightly upraised, and you'll see examples of that as we go over my article. But most citations will be at the end of sentences. I think a lot of times students, when they quote, uh, uh, they just grab a quote and they put it in the middle of a sentence. They want to put the citation right after the quote. Just wait till the end of the sentence. Now, I'm going to stop there. One of the things about citation is it's very easy to get into the weeds about citation. I can drive you crazy, and frankly, I probably will drive you crazy. I know this isn't the most fascinating topic in the world, but I just want to stress to you that I've just come to believe that it's the foundation of historical literacy, learning how to cite correctly and learning how to read citations. And in this series of podcasts, what I'm really going to focus on mostly is learning how to read citations. And then we'll focus on correct citations later on in the semester. So I know it seems super tedious, and probably it is super tedious. I actually find it tedious myself, but I cannot overemphasize enough the significance to it, to correct citation and being able to interpret citations in your ability to become a sophisticated historian. You've just got to know when you're looking at the citation, you've got to know what you're looking at, okay? So stick with me. It's not hard. It's certainly not as hard as any kind of math or anything like that. It is a bit tedious, but once you learn how to do it, you're set. And let me just say one more thing before I end this podcast. I wouldn't be spending time on it if I didn't think it was critically important.